figure out by now. Oh, you got your pictures on the wall, got your posters on the wall, got your problems on the wall. All of your problems, all of your problems, all of your feelings. We're supposed to care somehow. Oh, you got your pictures on the wall, got your posters on the wall, got your problems on the wall. Yeah, all of your problems, all of your problems. We're all working harder, waiting for a good chance to get lifted to the streets farther, waiting for a good chance to be another victim or martyr. Take anything to get me out of here. Working harder, waiting for a good chance to get lifted to the streets farther, waiting for a good chance to be another victim or martyr. Take anything to get me out of here.
Oh, wow, off to a hot start. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining Diverge Media here tonight. We'll be talking student loan debt forgiveness. We're going to be going through the ACES pandemic monitoring system to look at real-time hospital admission and surge capacity, as well as the last 7 and 30-day cycles for COVID, pneumonia, all of the pneumonia, influenza-like illness. COVID is included in that. COVID admissions are included in this hospital data we'll be going through. We got O'Toole talking about back to normal. We got the Twitter beef that went kind of viral. Actually, I was surprised how quickly that picked up, thanks to a few people that shared that out quickly. They know who they are. One of them had 500,000 followers, so that was kind of crazy to look at that. But basically, yeah, yes, audio would help. You got that right, Faith. Like, I'm always off to a great start when it's me in charge of things. So that kind of puts things in perspective. But yeah, we got the Twitter beef with the doctor, and obviously we're going to talk about that more because it matters. We had Michelle Rempel, the Shadow Minister of Health, ban a physician, and whether or not she agrees with her or not, or thinks she's wrong, is probably not best to ban physicians whom you don't agree with, especially ones that want to get back to normal right before you table a motion to get back to normal. But anyways, without further ado, I want to bring on board our other co-owner, Broderick Visser. Oh, no, try that again. I had you muted.
No. It's a doozy tonight. Hello, everybody. How are you doing?
All right. So off to a hot start. So I want to start with the ACES monitoring system, the pandemic monitoring system. We'll go into the data on that, and then we'll talk about it from there. But without further ado, my wife can add it to the screen when she's ready. So go back here. All right. So this is, do we have it up?
Yeah.
Perfect. So this one here, pneumonia, influenza-like illness, general infection, and COVID-19 flag new hospital admissions in the last 7 days. So this should pretty well capture everything. Now, this yellow line and maroon line are historical averages. It's saying if it stays consistently above those marks for a period of time, it's likely evidence of COVID transmission is what the pandemic monitoring system says. So against last 7 days, a little bit of a concern, but basically it's being driven out of a few areas. And then when we go to the last 30 days, you'll see the difference here where we are still, the blue line here is the historical average, and that black line is what we're actually recorded at. So we are actually below in the last 30 days the historical average for pneumonia, influenza-like illness, general infection, and COVID. So we added COVID in, and we're still below what the historical average was so far. We got another few days in the cycle of the last 2 years, 2018, 2019. So that's the data there. Let's go to the next slide. This one here, new hospital admissions, 7-day moving average. obviously below historical average even for this time of year. But this is pandemic versus pre-pandemic. But this is just new hospital admissions. 7-day moving average is below the historical average this time of year. So again, this is the ACES pandemic monitoring system. Over 131 hospitals in this data in Ontario included. New hospital admissions, 30-day moving average, well below the historical 30-day average of 2018, 2019, 125 versus 90. And you see all blue, which means at par with the historical average or less than the historical average. But there's one more we want to get through. Go under projects, Ontario Acute Care Surge Monitor. All right. Come on, load. So if you go to KFLNA, Public Health, this is the ACES monitoring system. That was the one we were just looking at. This one is acute care surge monitoring. Now, I posted a little bit from this earlier today, which we'll talk about how you can manipulate data and why that's important. But basically, based on the time of day, you look at the surge capacity, it's going to be different. So I could take this at 2 in the morning and make the hospital capacity look even better than it actually was. But 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, those are your busier times, and then likely after the bars close, things like that. But we can see the number of visits, number of hospitals by surge status, last hour. Vast majority are 70% or under surge capacity. And then this is number of visits admission. I'm not sure what that means exactly, if it means if it's sustained at that level, if it's going to be over surge capacity. But that's not the data we are after. So you can actually go through, if you're curious, and look at how many are over capacity or over the 90% number surge capacity. So also keep in mind that a lot of hospitals ran at over 100% capacity last year altogether. The surge capacity, they've cut down to 90 or above, so they still may be under 100% surge capacity, but it doesn't tell us. But most of Ontario, all green or yellow, few yellow, but just basically a few drivers and a few red zones. And then one last one here, because I showed the data on our Facebook page. So I just want full transparency here. So obviously it was 6,700 today, and this is what I mean about data manipulation. I wasn't even thinking about it at the time I did it, but it hadn't gone through its full 24-hour cycle. I actually thought it was the 23rd I was reading, not the day before. But here we are. It's at 12,765 so far for the day, another 4 hours to go. But this is an example. Depending on when you pull data, you can have completely different results. That's an example of that right there in real time. But again, we know from looking at the 30-day new admissions that we just went over, that hospital capacity is it's in good shape, and it's been under the historical average for the most part for almost all Ontario hospitals for the past 30 days. So that's that. Now, what are your takes on it? So I obviously wrote the article on it, but I want to get somebody else's take from the outside looking in.
I just, you kind of reminded me, it's not exactly related, but you kind of reminded me of that Joe Rogan clip you sent me the other day. And specifically, so it's not above average, but I find it interesting that I forget the guy's name who was talking about it in the Joe Rogan clip he sent me, but he was saying that there was a medical trial for a medicine, like pills that this guy was taking, but he didn't know he was on the placebo.
Mm-hmm.
And so that he took the whole bottle of pills, and his blood pressure skyrocketed, and all these medical complications, which were just in his head. So I just thought that was interesting. I know it's kind of not related, but I think
well, we can talk about that a little bit. The power of suggestion, and we'll broaden that. Power of suggestion and groupthink. So when you're convinced that you're right, you're on the truth. I think this is what's happened with COVID, is there's a subset of people that are so convinced that it's super deadly that I think all it would take to convince them, honestly, they would start to develop symptoms just from the belief alone, after a positive PCR test. I think people don't talk about that enough, but there is an element of, the mass hysteria element. And so what I see is I've watched a bunch of these COVID sharing groups where people are hardcore into COVID. I joined a bunch of those where they believe everything the government says. They think this is basically the Spanish flu and they're all going to die. And most of the time when you read those, you realize that it seems like they go in there and they kind of get information from each other. And then one person says, oh, I had this. And then it's, oh yeah, I had that too. And then maybe it's all legit, but I feel like people downplay the amount that people's emotions and other people, the power of suggestion can play on symptoms and outcome as well. And the perfect example of that, what you were talking about, is the power of a placebo. There's people that in placebo trials are convinced that they got the real drug and it's working. And then basically in the story, the guy lost his placebo, his sugar pills, and panicked and thought he was going to die because he didn't have his medication. His medication was sugar pills. He was that convinced that it was going to save him. Now,
so he took them all.
This is a well-known, this is a well-known phenomenon in the human psyche. So to just dismiss it and say that it's not a possibility for the general public when it comes to COVID and the mass fear they put into people with just daily hammering the numbers, daily hammering the fear, basically just doom and gloom all the time, it's not a surprise. So that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and I get your point with the so people thinking they have symptoms when maybe
it's like Munchausen's disease.
It's like I guess I'll bring it up now. My work just switched over and they've mandated that employees have to wear the blue or black surgical masks. So I can't wear anything like this anymore, which is kind of like a gaiter thing goes around your neck. Super breathable. I love them, but I can't wear them anymore.
You don't love them. You love it more than the alternative.
That's what I mean. I love them more than the alternative. But what I find, and one of my managers even said to me, was with the surgical masks, she found, and I find the same thing, that by the end of the day, your throat will start to be sore. And so maybe people are getting that as a symptom.
Yeah, probably because you're breathing back in. I would imagine it's keeping more of it here, and then you're breathing it back in, and it would make your maybe dry out your throat, make it coarse over the course of the day.
I try to drink lots of water, and I change my mask every break, so 4 a day, I guess. But that and just wearing it all day, you get congested, and it doesn't feel
all right.
But
I want to shift here. So I drove by the school just around the block from my house, and it's recess, and I'm driving outside, and I'm like, man, it's kind of getting warm today. I got the windows down. It's beautiful out, and I'm passing, and I see children walking together, distanced, with masks on outside. And this is the madness we're putting our children. Like, you're complaining. The reason I bring that up, and it's not to belittle you, but I'm saying, like, you're an adult. And you're complaining about having to wear that throughout the course of an 8-hour workday, and you get probably the same equivalent of breaks as a kid in school with recess. Like what, 2 15 minutes and a lunch? Right? You notice that school's set up the same way? That's on purpose, by the way. So 2 15 minutes and a lunch, and they're dealing with the same thing, and they're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and young, you know what I mean? So you got that. It's what we've done to our kids during all this. People are going to have to answer, and I think there's going to be a lot of heads hung in shame when they realize the extent of what they did and really how flimsy any of the science they said it was based on really was. Like, listen, there's some studies out there that show marginal benefits of mask and social distancing. But if we just went over the origins of social distancing, and you followed that article earlier this week, it was a 15-year-old science fair project. You had a 15-year-old, her dad was a modeler. He piggybacked her work because presumably he thought he saw dollar signs and thought he could get paid, and did. And this 15-year-old girl, her model becomes the basis point of distancing children in school and distancing in the workplace. And lockdowns in general. Like, does anybody even, in the New York Post wrote about it. It's not like it was just us that talked about it in some deep, dark elements of the web that found. No, it was written about in the mainstream media and it was just dropped. And I don't understand how we've just sat by and watched it all happen as a society. It's one thing, like I said this to Kate in the car. It's one thing, you know, you can tell a lot about society, about how they treat their elderly, but my goodness, I didn't think I'd see how quickly society was willing to treat children poorly. I don't know how else to say it, but we are treating children. I look at school right now with the social distancing, with the mask. Listen, before all of this happened with schools, I viewed schools as basically a place to learn the basics that were needed out of life, your reading, writing, math, but basically as a place to build relationships, to learn the ins and outs of friendships. And, oh, you know, I can't be mean like that because nobody will want to hang around me. So I can't win all the time. Nobody will want all the little things that go on. And then we took that out of schools. That's what bothers me the most. And society didn't blink. They don't care. They didn't bat an eye then. And they're still not batting an eye now, except for a small vocal minority that I guess we've been a part of for like, what, a year now? Over a year now? How long ago? The very first article I wrote was children aren't at risk. Our children aren't super spreaders. They're not at risk. Let them play. It was true then based on the early data coming out. And it's true now. So basically the 15-year-old's model, hey, your kids can't hang out with their friends and they're socially distanced because of, it was based on the presumption that asymptomatic individuals spread the virus at half the infectivity of somebody who's symptomatic. Wuhan, China does a PCR test on roughly 10 million residents. 300 come back asymptomatic PCR positives. Oh, you have COVID. You got a PCR positive test. They send them to the lab, see if they're actually infectious. Out of the 300, hazard the guess, you already know the answer, and I'm sure the audience does too. 0. We're actually infectious. So we're treating children. You got to mask up. They're completely healthy. You got to mask up. You got to be distanced. We're not saying, hey, Johnny, we could have educated and say, hey, you really need to stay home if you got a tickle in your throat and things like that. They could have made those arguments and said, we don't know and we want to be extra cautious, and then still done away with the mask. But no. And the reasoning behind it doesn't make any sense. We have the court precedent from the Ontario Nursing Association. Courts were saying in 2018 that the masks were marginal benefit at best, basically, but that there is insufficient evidence that it protected the patient or the nurse. And influenza particles are bigger than COVID. Like, what are we doing? I'm sorry, that was a big rant, but I am just so frustrated. I drove by that school, and all I can think is like, man, I am so glad I pulled my daughter. I am so glad I pulled her from school and decided to homeschool when all this crap happened. And then I thought about it, and I thought, I'm so glad that the military, like that I got out of the military when I did. And I'll talk about that after. I actually just got in touch with Jeremy McKenzie. You know who I'm talking about, Rage?
Yes.
So there's a live stream he did today, and he's talking about some friends that had reached out to him from the Canadian Armed Forces about the vaccine and basically being coerced into taking it, forced into taking it. And he gave his opinion on that. So we're likely going to have him on the show. He said he's given us the okay. He just said, give me the time. So I'll give him the plug that way. But he, in talking about that, he took some pills that were told that he was told he had to take. And like he said, like a good soldier, he did. And he's had lifelong health repercussions as a result. I believe he said it burnt part of his brainstem. And his point was, maybe don't rush into something that hasn't been peer reviewed. And that's, you know, is having issues. But so I want to get your opinion here. Let's stop on the vaccines and stop and hammer this home. On the vaccine, the data, me and Paul talked about this on the Sunday show. The data itself doesn't look bad. I mean, like anytime vaccines come out, there's a subset of adverse reactions. And I have my own opinion on that, but I'm not here to give it tonight. But anyways, it doesn't look that bad on a grand scale. Like there's been 40 million shots, I think, roughly, of the AstraZeneca, 20 million, something ballpark, right? But the issue is, even if you say, okay, well, the numbers don't look that bad. If that's your premise and you look at the numbers and you say there's not that many adverse events, the bookkeeper is the company running the trial. So like AstraZeneca, they're the ones who are there's no peer review. They are their own bookkeepers. So basically they got found out. My understanding is AstraZeneca was using previous trial data. Okay. So they were using early trial data to show that their efficacy was better than it actually was. And this is why I'm bringing this up full circle here. That is the fundamental issue of an interim emergency approval of a vaccine. Hey, Broderick, your company stands to make billions of dollars. Don't lie in your data. You wouldn't do that, right?
Never.
Right? So this is the point. They have interim approval, and it's Pfizer, it's Moderna, and it's AstraZeneca. So my point is that needs to be considered. All things considered, let's just ask outright, are you going to be taking the vaccine? Like, what would it take? What would it take? If they put a gun to your head, are you taking it?
I guess. Like, I don't know. Like, I was
He's like, well, this is deep.
I was thinking about the other day, like, I'm just like, actually, I was thinking about it today. They changed this whole mask thing. And like, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna fight it and then maybe get rid? Like, I can't get rid now because I need to be able to transfer when we move. But I can't, like, it's that or getting fired. And I thought about it. I'm like, what if they, like, it's probably coming down the line eventually. But what happens when they go? All employees must be vaccinated to come to work. Like, if that becomes even like a province-wide thing or a Canada-wide thing, then that's kind of it's a touchy topic.
Well, that's what they're pushing.
Touchy decision for many people like me, just a young guy trying to make enough money to survive.
Here's what I say, and it's the same thing Jeremy McKenzie echoed. Your career might be real important to you, or making a buck, or eating, those are real concerns.
Mm-hmm.
But your healthcare is forever.
Yeah.
Your health is forever. And there's no takesies, backsies. And it could be out of my fundamental issue. And my fundamental issue with vaccines is that they haven't, and I vaccinate my children for the record, but they haven't narrowed it down to where they know what the markers are that would cause an issue. So it's the same premise here with AstraZeneca. And I had this conversation with other people, but they do 20 million doses for an example. But out of that 20 million, why is there a subset of X amount of people? Even if it was 1,000 people out of 20 million, that's still 1,000 people that will never be the same. And then there's also deaths as a result. And there's different health, but they'll never be the same as a result of that. But one of the Paul just commented here, Miami Heat, I believe, announced vaccinated people can come to games. So that's kind of the push. But I guess is like the coercion's already coming. Like, you can see the writing on the wall, can you not?
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing it already at work. The slight changes, and it's like little boil a frog, right?
Yeah, it's literally like this little piss off for me today, and then I'm just gonna have to get used to it.
And then when you get used to it, then the next thing comes in. But the issue is, like, I think the populace is waking up. I think a lot of people are fed up and starting to fight back on the narrative. But our newest correspondent, Paul Staley, brought this point up, is maybe there's so much going on in the courts here, it might be the last thing to go, is the mask. But arguably, the consequences of that policy are really not going to be known for some time, because the consequences are going to be in the development of children. Crucial development times, especially. We talked about this in the past. Daycare, right? You're sending your kid to daycare right now okay, let's put this in perspective. The Canadian government, their solution is, if your kid's in daycare, you need to spend more time with them at home unmasked. Simple enough, right? Except I had my kid in daycare, and I know what it's like to have to work till 5 o'clock and then pick up your kids and then get home and then make dinner and then cram so my point is, I used to work a job. I would be up at 6 in the morning, drop my kids off at daycare for 7:30, start work at 8, finish work at 5. Okay. Get off work, go get my kids from daycare. And by the time I did all of that, I might have gotten maybe an hour with them at home, hour and a half. And that would include my meal. That would include cooking dinner. So the solution to them is they're 12 to 13 hours a day. They're seeing mass people. They're going through the most crucial developmental stages of their life. What is that doing to them? Because you really think you're offsetting it with a half hour to an hour at home unmasked for the 13 hours they see, right? Where they don't have that development opportunity.
They're not going to be able to read people's emotions and
their shields,
emotions and like facial responses and all that kind of jazz, right?
So I'm corrected. Kate says they're wearing shields in daycares. Regardless, it's better. Like, at least they're doing that in daycares, but I imagine it would still diminish the ability. But okay, daycare. Well, what's after school and school? That starts at grade 1.
That's going to
5 years old
on each daycare too, right?
Oh, so okay, yeah. So you can have kindergarten in the after school programs that would be masked 24/7. That's my point. So what's the quantifiable cost of that on society with a bunch of kids that maybe don't know how to read each other when they grow up? And maybe does that mean they're more accepting of authoritative voices? That goes through my head, because think about it, right? You can't read people's faces. You can't build relationships as good. So maybe you look to the expert in the room or the authority in the room, and you're more accepting of authority because I don't know. These are questions to ask. My major concern is obviously with children, but there is some health concerns. The dirty, soiled mask, I actually think, is a big issue in factories and physical labor positions where you're required to wear them for extended periods of time. But you deal with that. Like,
well, my coworker today, who was also very pissed about not being able to wear his regular gaiter, just like me. He has a beard, like a big beard, and I've said that, I'm like, that's, if masks work, quote unquote, which they don't, then your beard doesn't, like, your beard doesn't help. Like, it's not going to do anything.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the thing. They want to tell you what you have to put on your face, but they don't want to go so far as to say what you have to do with your face.
But
does that make sense?
Yeah, but he has the surgical on, and it's moving around all when he talks, because it doesn't sit on his face. It's
there's not.
Beard. So he's we're cleaning up the new pharmacy location. It's dirty, and his hands are dirty, and he's always and it got from being blue to like a gray.
Nice.
In a day. So,
and this is the point, and a lot of people are reusing them, but even that, you're not supposed, every 20-30 minutes, as soon as it's wet or soiled, it's supposed to be gone. And so is that happening anymore? I highly doubt it.
I change it as much as every couple hours.
But that reminds me, like, the mask thing, again, they're literally telling you have to put things on your face, but they don't want to go so far as to tell you what to do with your face. You have a beard, you might as well not wear a mask. Like, seriously. If you got a big bushy beard, you might as well not wear a mask.
Might as well just braid it in front of your face.
Yeah, but they can't tell you to shave your beard, because that would be like intrusive, right? It's just the absurdity of this. It's a survival skill, being able to read someone's face. It's then the first things humans look at to see if someone is a threat. Also a social skill to be able to read a room. Nailed it. So that's our newest correspondent, Paul Staley. You can catch us with the Sunday show at 3 p.m. Eastern. He's obviously in the show in the chat room tonight. But you're absolutely right. It's a survival skill, and it's something. It was a safety mechanism. You needed to be able to read people's faces so you could read the tribe to know if there was danger present. And why do I say that you might be more adept to listening to authoritative voices? Because if you can't follow, the emotions of the tribe and know what they're thinking, you might default to the authoritative voice because they're the expert after all, right? Isn't that funny? Like a government standpoint, all it takes to become a government expert is to have a degree in a field, take their money, and speak in favor of their narrative. Government expert. Sorry, I cut you off. You're going to say something there.
You were saying that you're making me lose my track of thought. I guess what I was thinking was the just move on. I think children. Stop. I think children would probably end up having a different, like it would enhance another one of their abilities to on how to read someone. But I don't think that's a good.
No, that has been one of the arguments.
I think it would enhance it maybe in a way. Like if you lose your sense of, say, hearing or say sight, it enhances your hearing. So maybe in that way, but I don't think that's necessarily always a good thing, right?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and honestly, that has been a narrative laid out by experts that support the government narrative. Is like, they'll pick up other skills and basically look at it as a challenge, and now it's something you need to develop. And it's like you're just saying that a bunch of kids are going to get left behind. And I'll give you an example here. Like when a kid is learning to walk, do you know how many times they'll fall? It's tens of thousands.
I've seen it.
Right? Yes, same concept.
All Tumble, right. Look up at the dad.
All right. Well, we got some stuff to get into. What do you want to get into? I think it's a good progression. Let's go Twitter beef, and then because that will flow into the conservative Aaron O'Toole. We're here to save you now, even though we haven't said anything for a year.
I think you should introduce this Twitter beef with a little bit of background on our interactions with Michelle.
Oh, that reminds me. Here, let me, Michelle.
I mean, you can always just
Young Global Leaders Diverge Media. Yeah, so Michelle, she must sickly have it out for her. I was thinking about that today when I wrote the article.
Well, that's what I was thinking when you decided to write it. I'm like,
you're like, is he hate Michelle Rempel? No, I don't care. I don't care about Michelle Rempel in particular. But basically, okay, so to explain the history here, I wrote an article, I don't know how long ago now.
Young Global Leaders probably was like
November 23rd. Wow. November 23rd, 2020. I wrote an article titled "The Great Reset, Liberals Considered as NDP, All Involved and Seem to be Working Together Towards Sustainable Development Goals." Now, that's because Michelle Rempel has a World Economic Forum page, and she was a Young Global Leader. Now, she's since scrubbed both, I believe.
Off the website, eh?
Yeah, no, she doesn't even show up when you look her up on Young Global Leaders anymore or World Economic Forum. She didn't like being found out too much. and I'm being dead serious. Like, I'm not sensationalizing that. So we wrote the article, and then it blew up. It was like 400 retweets. And then she deleted herself off the website that we pointed out.
Such news to me.
So the Young Global Leaders is owned by Klaus Schwab, who is the president of the World Economic Forum, and titled the book The Great Reset. Now, Michelle Rempel was a Young Global Leader, which means she was a part of his organization. There's pictures of her from 2017 actually circling right now from Theo Fleury talking about that. But basically, she scrubbed herself from the website. But Chrystia Freeland was a part of that same group, same with Jagmeet Singh, Terry Beach, parliamentary secretary. But anyways, this thing blew up, and she tried to get in a conversation with me and defend it. She went, I went to Davos, but I wasn't the type to, I didn't eat all those expensive meals. I didn't feel right putting it on the taxpayer's dime. So I went to a gas station and ate a sandwich. It's like, that doesn't mean anything about anything. Like, why you don't need to be
the answer.
Well, it was a very political answer.
Kind of just like tried to swoop in over our heads with the political answer that didn't answer the question.
It was she wanted to rally people around her and make, it was a feel-good response of like, I'm a good person, I'm a great politician, you should love me. Political answer. And she was hoping a bunch of people would rally around and probably squash it, but actually the opposite happened, and a bunch of people rallied around and went, wait a minute, this is kind of weird. Why were you a part of that organization? And so it backfired on her, needless to say. Because she actually interacted with us, because she said, I'll bite, and then she tried to give an explanation. But now, she has had a Twitter beef. I covered Twitter beef that blew up, and it's going viral right now with Dr. Kulvinder Kaur. So Dr. Kulvinder Kaur has been an outspoken Canadian physician, Ontarian physician, Canadian, I'm not sure if she's from Ontario, but she's an outspoken physician from Canada on the COVID narrative, and Michelle blocked her on Twitter. And so I pointed out that it's maybe not a good look as the shadow minister of health to ban physicians, even if you disagree with them. Like, that's science. People don't always agree, and it's not always consensus, and that's science and medicine. And we just go with the best available information at the time, and there's not always going to be consensus, and that's a healthy thing. But from the Conservative Party of Canada, self-proclaimed party of freedom, rights, and liberties, for months, Michelle Rempel has disabled all commenting on her tweets and blocks any harmful rhetoric. So this was her own letter. It says, well, you need to give us your plan. Well, what's your plan?
Hey, just pause for a second here. Something's darker, and I just reloaded, giving me
the video of Aaron O'Toole. Do you want to working?
Mm-hmm.
I'm still buffering.
Yesterday, Aaron O'Toole called on the Trudeau Liberals to permanently lift COVID restrictions, and he said he wants, within 20 days, a clear, data-driven plan to support gradually, safely, and permanently opening or lifting COVID-19 restrictions. This basically just sums it up in this video. It's very
Unifor
short.
has been calling for the safe reopening of borders, rapid testing, and dynamic quarantine. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business has called for the expanded use of rapid screening to avoid further lockdowns. The Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business has partnered with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, the Retail Council of Canada, and the CFIB to collectively ask the Trudeau government to present a national strategy. These groups are documenting the massive consequences of lockdowns on workers, small businesses, and their millions of employees across Canada. In their words, it is neither socially or economically sustainable to rely heavily on rotating lockdowns while we wait for an effective vaccine to be widely administered in the coming year. I agree. That's why today Canada's Conservatives are calling on the Liberals to table, within 20 days, a clear, data-driven plan to support gradually, safely, and permanently lifting COVID-19 restrictions. The President of the United States and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom have both released public plans for economic reopening. But Mr. Trudeau refuses to give Canadians clarity on whether and when regular and social life will be able to resume, and under what circumstances and conditions. Which measures will help make the determination?
Anyone pause there?
Will that reopening?
Yeah.
It's a big nothing burger. You know what I mean? He says a lot of stuff that sounds good, but all he did was just ask for them to release a plan. And they're not going to. And then they're going to gripe that they didn't release a plan. And I'm like, they should have a plan. But what's your plan? This is my fundamental issue with politics. It's such a perception game. But do they have a plan, or is it their plan to just criticize the Liberal government?
Yeah. There's not much left on
Look
this.
like.
Yeah, that's it. I kind of added to this, the People's Party and Bernier have been saying this since day one. And now he's just piggybacking on those principles however he can, because it's politically convenient. Because now is the right time, because a bunch of organizations and different big Canadian
I think the issue is at this point, sorry, the interject there. At this point, Aaron O'Toole could come out and promise me a Lamborghini. I don't care. I don't believe him. I don't believe the Conservative Party, and I don't believe the Liberal Party, and I pretty much don't trust politicians in general. I have my thoughts process on this, but basically, if you vote for a principled platform, at least you can complain if they don't follow through. I don't have to like anyone, or I think they're the greatest person in the world. They just have to follow through on the right things for the country. But I don't trust them. It wouldn't matter to me what was said? Like, would you believe him?
No, not now, not knowing and seeing what has changed since the Conservative leadership fireside chat. But what I would say is that for Canadians who aren't very politically involved following everything, I know that night as much, like I would have voted for, if I had a Conservative membership at the time, I would have voted for Derek Sloan in a heartbeat. But at that time,
You were impressed by Aaron O'Toole.
I was impressed by Aaron O'Toole because I think he has a way to spew garbage out of his mouth, but that looks like, dessert or something. I'm just making this up at the top of my head. But also just make it look so appealing when it's really nothing, like a nothing burger, exactly the way you said. And people are convinced by it.
It's like dressing up it's like dressing up a burger to look real good, and then the patty inside's from Fast Eddie's.
No, the patty inside, a vegan burger.
Oh,
disappointing.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I just don't have the trust that they would follow through. And you know where that comes from? I'm going to be tough on China, hires a former Huawei executive. I won't kick Derek Sloan out of the Conservative Party, kicks Derek Sloan out of the Conservative Party. I don't think I believe what you say, man. Like, it might be something to do with your pattern of saying one thing and doing another. Maybe. It might have something to do with it.
The palaver thing.
All right, so I got one more here for you. Germany is imposing strict lockdowns. Have you heard about this?
I don't believe I have.
All right, so Germany imposed a strict lockdown over Easter. We are in a new pandemic, said the Chancellor, Angela Merkel.
On the screen share.
Yeah, where's the producer?
Sorry, I put up the wrong screen.
Rookie. German federal and state leaders have agreed on a radical shutdown over the Easter holidays. The country will enter even stricter lockdown from April 1st to 5th over the Easter holiday period, when shops, including grocery stores, will largely have to close. Merkel warned that Germany needed to break the exponential growth of the third wave. Case numbers have reached levels that authorities say will overburden intensive care units, likely from projections from models. I'd add the part about the models if it wasn't clear already. Today's announcements marks a reversal from this month when state leaders agreed to begin a cautious reopening process. Talks between Germany's 16 federal states and Merkel lasted until early hours of the morning. Oh yeah, she's working hard. Yay. What are the new measures? Churches will be asked to hold services marking the Christian festival online. So no in-person church. No more than 5 adults from 2 households will be able to meet over the 5-day period. Testing and vaccination centers can remain open. Public gatherings all prohibited. Almost all shops will be shut during the 5 days. Only grocery stores will remain open. On April 3rd, anyone from Germany holidaying abroad will have to be tested before boarding a flight back to Germany. This emergency break will halt further reopenings and will apply to areas exceeding 100 new cases per 100,000 inhabitants over a 7-day period. Oh, she said we are in a very, very serious situation. What we have is essentially a new pandemic, significantly more deadly, significantly more infectious. It really makes you a bit wishful about what we could have already achieved, adding that the virus has now basically eaten up earlier gains. So does that mean the lockdowns from before were a waste of time? So, you see what you want to see, right? Read between the lines. We were quite close to the Easter holidays, and a lot of people wanted to go on holidays. So for political leaders, it was quite hard to tell people no. So they're trying to make her out like the hero. Well, she had to make a tough decision to save humanity, to save the country, basically. All their models have been wrong. You got that right. And Roman Baber, independent MPP, pointed that out here in Ontario. Pointed out the fact that even the low projections have been high. But, keep up the fear. It's working. I want to ask you, I've been seeing a difference in people lately, but are you seeing it in Walmart at all? Are people being less weird about the distancing and stuff?
Oh, the majority, I see very, like I think it was last live stream I said I had one person basically like spaz jump away from me because I was too close, but I don't believe I was too close at all. But other than that, no, most people who ask me for their help don't care that I'm within their bubble of 6 feet or whatever, like a foot away. I don't really care myself, and if they cared enough, they would be backing away from me. But there's certain people I try to keep my distance away from, like sketchy
Old people.
people, smelly people. But that's totally different. But and then
It's
worst
totally
part is,
unrelated.
the worst part is like when you back away and they keep getting closer and they don't take the hand. Anyways,
They don't pick up on the body language you're laying down. They just
I've
keep doing it.
seen just generally, I don't see much of a difference, or like not. I mean, a bigger difference. I mean, more so a bigger difference that they don't really care. So.
Oh, that's not what I want to hear. I want to hear that people are done with it. I keep asking, like, kind of part of me, like deep down, just hopes that you'll be like, yeah, no, I just keep seeing people just like, hugging each other just randomly. I don't know what I expected to hear, but like something that would leave me optimistic. Now I'm going to bring something up here. Again, we're working on a few different interviews on the go, but why is this? That's not the one. That's not the one at all. So I'm working on landing an interview with somebody. If you may know who they are if you're out in Alberta, but just shoring up times. It looks like it's going to be happening, so I'm going to start promoting that. But RC the Rapper, if you've heard of who he is, we're going to be talking about kind of his thought process on COVID and how he got to where he's at on that, and lyrically some of the lyrics that are in his songs, and go through kind of, he's a very good lyricist. But I just want to play a quick clip of one of his songs, actually, called Friends. It's doing very well right now. Do I have audio?
Mhm.
Cool.
I'm not your enemy, but you don't want me near. I'm not your enemy, but I'm the one you fear. Why are you scared of me? That don't make no sense. We've all got enemies, and now what we need is friends. Trying to hold on to my friends who have different opinions, victims of the tribalism in a broken system. Sometimes it feels like I've been chasing down a hopeless mission, but it's a crime to have an open mind and see it different. Black and white, red and blue, they split us like a prism. They sow division and we misdirect our good intentions, but denigrating and snitching upon our neighbors isn't doing anyone no favors. There's graver danger. Can they really keep us safe with a baton and taser? Imposing fines on people who dare to show their faces, arresting people for trying to earn their honest wages. Still don't believe that we ain't free because we can't see the cages. What's the difference? Social distance.
All right, so that's RC the Rapper. He's from Alberta. We're just shoring up the times of when that's going to happen, but we're aiming, looks like, for Easter weekend, I think it was. That's next weekend?
I think you said the.
I think the 3rd is what we're aiming for, but I'm just waiting to hear back from Taz. But this is where you lose us, Boomer. Rap sucks. I like to go from the perspective, Glenn, even if you don't like the style of rap, the lyrics he's laying out are very good. Now he talks about
I've always been a lyrics guy.
yeah,
No
so
matter what it is,
the
but-
same idea, same concept as Tom McDonald, who lyrically just says what a lot of people wish they could say and just finds a way to coherently lay out what many people feel but are too afraid to say. And I think that's kind of the same vibe I get from RC and Conrad, RC. But
the lyrics got me a little shivery, kind of like the Rise Against bullshit.
yeah, Rise Against is another song.
That song, it gives me shivers every time because the lyrics are so. It's written like 3-4 years ago, but the lyrics are so representative of our era now.
Well, I'm excited to bring RC in and have him in. The hope is that we're going to have the talk, learn about why he believes what he believes on the COVID narrative, how he came to do the music, and it will kind of intertwine together. And rumor has it, he's kind of, he may have a couple of bars for us to do live. So if that's the case, it'll be exciting. We're excited to have him on. I think promoting music that lyrically hits at the heart of the issues is one of the most important things you can do, because music will touch in a way that words cannot. So, that song, I'm not your enemy, but you don't want me near, right? That's we think about the social distancing. This is the treatment people get. I'm not, I am not your enemy, but people don't want music. You'll hit way more people than you are. Important to put a spotlight on it, and I'm excited to be able to do so. So, Marie McKenzie, and then look for us on the live show Sunday first. Please, I'll share it. The point on that is the free tuition will basically no value to it, because then it's
at when this happens, you're gonna. So let me find this place before. My apologies. I lost my track of thought. You get what you pay for, is what he was saying. So with the party's policy, second post-secondary institutions and drive the best professors elsewhere. This is an idea, he said. This is a basic idea, he said, that whenever something is free, you get what you pay for. And that would be a shame for me if I was in school and I had the most wonderful professors that created such a great learning experience to not have that anymore.
Yeah, well, it kind of feels like they're playing a fast and quick one on you there. But the takeaway, like $20,000, they're saying it's going to be a $6 billion program annually. How do you afford that to begin with? But the reality is, how do you pay it back? We can't pay back what we have now. It sounds good, but they can't afford it now. So you're going to add in another program we can't afford. That's basically where we've added more debt than both world wars combined to approach COVID. And now we're going to throw more money at another program that we can't afford. Let's add another $6 billion annual program to the taxpayers' coffers.
They said they would cut $6 billion, but where are they going to cut $6 billion from?
Police.
Was it the NDP's crazy? They probably do. They would destroy this country more than the Liberals. But.
The NDP, was it the lady in our area, the MP in our area, was for defunding the police from the NDP. She wanted now she'll say reallocation to other programs, but as Tim Ballard from OUR rescues children from human trafficking says, the first thing to go when you cut the police budget is child crimes. So that's the reality of pushing the police out. But I think it's a good place to end tonight. Nothing is free. That's right. Every bit it has to be paid back, and the NDP can come. It's really easy to promise things with. It's the equivalent of you stole your dad's credit card, and then you started offering to buy your friends stuff if they would do things for you with his credit card. It's the same thing politicians do. They steal your credit card, they steal the taxpayer's credit card, and they come out and promise stuff and say, if you only elect me, I'll pay for it. And meanwhile, it's like they got your money.
Yeah, that's one thing I don't think I clarified was that is his election promise if there is a spring election. But he's been he's been stopping these elections over and over again. The vote of no confidence. But
it's because they probably won't do better in a new election.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they will. They might do slightly better than they before, but dear God, I hope not.
NDP with a majority. Ooh.
I honestly don't know if I want to live in Canada anymore. That's a sad thing to say, but oh man.
No, the election will fix everything, and everything will be fine.
That's got to be a bigger nightmare than having Trudeau anyway. What? I'm sorry, but
let's just end on a Debbie Downer. It's not going to be a quick and easy thing. Hey, Canada, it doesn't matter who we elect in the next election. It is going to be a slow and painful process back to any semblance of a quality economy after the effects of the debt and destruction of jobs in the economy gets through and actually, starts to trickle its way and people realize how bad it's going to be. That's when people start to wake up. Because now things are still good.
Hand it off to the NDPs, and then when Canada does go bankrupt,
I can honestly see, and Glenn points this out, I can see the NDP being the opposition. NDP as opposition. I can literally see the NDP beating the Conservatives, and it would actually probably end up being a Liberal majority, NDP, and then as an opposition, and then Conservatives in behind. I could see that happening under O'Toole.
Nah, I think NDP minority.
NDP minority prediction from the wife. I don't know. I don't know. It depends where people's minds are at. I think many people are done with the lockdowns. If a politician comes out and promises not to go back to that, they might get a lot of support. But that's what I think the Conservatives are doing with this whole letter of return to normal, is kind of feigning like they actually care about that. But again, I don't trust them to actually follow through and be anti-lockdown and pro-liberty when they've been silent for nearly a year.
And it depends if young voters actually get out and vote. Like last election, they were the majority, but they 18 to 37-year-olds, but they didn't come out in full power. So that's kind of the issue.
Canadians never do. I mean, 50% turnout's like great. It's sad. I mean, but here we are. It's Canada for you. All right. That's a good place to shut it off. Well, it's Canada for you. Isn't that a little depressing, everyone? All right. Greg Staley from Diverge Media. Good night.
Brother, busy. Have a good night, everybody.
Cheers,
Bye.
everybody.